Hey everybody, so today I'm going to talk about overcoming anxiety. So I'm going to talk quite a bit on this one, and I also want to go over my anxiety story and what I've been through and how I've gotten to the point that I'm at now. So I hope that this will benefit some people. I know, this is primarily like a music video channel and a video production and how to do channel. But since the beginning, since starting the page, one of my goals was to also make this a motivational channel. So I want to be able to help people in one way or another. And as far as anxiety goes, it's been a life struggle of mine now for maybe about 6 years. But I used to be so much worse off than where I am now. And I feel like the information that I have and what's helped me can help other people. So I really want to get it out there. And it's actually been a goal of mine to make a video on this for a while now. So I'm going to jump into it and hopefully this helps some of y'all. So about 6 years ago, before I had my son, I was at a really stressful point in my life. I was in a really bad relationship, a really unhealthy relationship, and I was about to have an unplanned child with this person. Mental disability actually ran in her side of the family. So I was very scared that my son would actually have the same issues, that he would be disabled, and it comes to be that he actually is. My son has autism and some other disabilities. So anyway, turns out my fears were true, and I did have a special needs son. Now, so anyways, I also had a lot of other things, a lot of other stress factors at the time. And a month before I had my son was really where my first real panic or anxiety attack happened. Before that, years prior, I had had little small hints of anxiety attacks while doing a job that I hated. Doing door to door, I would have miniature little anxiety attacks. After years of working there, I hated doing door to door. I was like a door to door salesperson doing canvassing and never liked it. But for a while I was one of the top salesmen. I did well at it. Then out of nowhere, probably about a year and a half in, I started having little anxiety attacks. Just where, any nervous twitches that you have, they'll be a little excessive, whether it be, touching your nose or biting your lip, touching your ear, just little nervous twitches. Those would happen a lot. You feel like you couldn't breathe a little bit. People were staring at you like they could see your nervous twitches and things like that. So those were minor, those were small time. Now, jump into the month before I had my son, I had my first real panic attack or anxiety attack. But at the time, I didn't know that that's what it was. A month before I had my boy, I was drinking pretty heavy. I was kind of on a binger. Like I said, I was going through a hard time in my life. At that time, I kind of used alcohol as an outlet. And my son was going to be born within about a month. I was stressed out. I was drinking a lot. Now, I had a long night of binge drinking. Called it a night, took it easy. And then the next day, I was sobering up. I was kind of laying on my couch. I was the only one at home at the time. And out of nowhere, I just started feeling my heart racing. Boom, boom. Felt my pulse in my chest, my hands, my face, just kind of all over my body. I got really clammy. Just felt like I couldn't breathe, like I couldn't get any oxygen in. My hands started going numb. Different extremities started going numb. I got up and I started walking around the house, drinking water, just moving my hands like this. Like I didn't know what was going on. And I just felt terrible. And I didn't know what was going on because this was like a first for me. I remember I hopped up once it got really bad and I felt like my tongue and my face was going numb. That's when I went to my next door neighbors and I told them, hey, can you call the paramedics? I think my phone was dead at the time or it was off, I don't remember. I told my neighbors, they called 911. I told them, hey, I think I'm having a stroke. My face was going numb, my body was going numb. It was a terrible feeling. So they called the paramedics. They came. When they showed up, I was okay until the point to where maybe I got into the ambulance, and once that happened, I was already kind of losing control of my limbs. I was going numb all over my body. Everything was felt like it was vibrating. I get into the ambulance, and that's when everything just and that's when everything locked up. I lost control of my face, my hands locked up, my feet, and my whole body just went like rigor mortis, stiffed up, couldn't talk anymore. I was just like that. I ended up stuck like that for about 2 hours. They brought me to the hospital, and basically what they had chalked it up to was like an overdose. Now at the time I was sober, but like I said, I was binge drinking and stuff the night before. That's what they chalked it up to, so I don't know if they treated me worse because of that situation or whatnot. But I had asked them to while I was in the hospital, I had asked them to call my family. At the time I couldn't even talk. I was still all stiff. I was like that for about 2 hours, so I was like, hey, can you call, hey, like that. About 2 hours I was stuck like that. They never called my family. It took me about that long before I was able to come back out of it and unlock my hands and the rest of my body. So that's kind of where everything started. That was the first for me, one of the scariest experiences of my life, and I've kind of been through some things, but that was that was just different for me for sure, not being able to control what I was feeling and control my body. So that's kind of where everything started to begin with. So after that day, some other things started happening, and I began having struggles with those same issues. I don't know if it was the next time or if there was a time in between, but the next time that stood out was when I went to work. I made it to work for a couple of weeks after this, but I went to work and I was with the client. I do in-home care. I've been doing this for a while. It was a good job for me. So I'm driving one of my clients to a record store at first, and that's when I feel that same feeling start to creep back in. I start going numb in my hands, my face, and I'm driving. Meanwhile, he's he's noticing everything. I'm taking care of a disabled person, but he's still noticing, hey, Anthony, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm okay. I'm trying to hide it from him, but I couldn't, especially when he kept asking me, are you sure you're okay? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm okay. And I keep trying to get through it, and it gets worse. Now, at the time, I just had a cup of coffee. Keep in mind, I used to drink coffee just like everyone else. No big deal. You don't really feel any huge effects from it or anything like that. It's a cup of coffee. Wakes you up. You're good. Had a couple of cups. We're driving, and it really starts hitting me while we're on the freeway. And I'm going numb. My hands are locking up, they're hurting. I'm trying to get us to our destination, and it ends up getting so bad, I'm like, man, I can't drive like this. I'm gonna have to pull over. But I couldn't pull over anywhere on the freeway. So we're getting off in the exit, and everything's locking up. My hands, I'm losing control of them. I end up having to run a red light, pull over. I park into a grocery store parking lot, pull over, and I thought again, like, man, I'm having a heart attack or something. My pulse was just pounding out of my chest. I could feel it through my whole body. Call 911. I call my client's parents to pick him up, and then the paramedics take me to the hospital. When I'm in the ambulance, they check my blood pressure, and they tell me that it's so high that I could have had a heart attack. It was 200 and something over 100 and something, my blood pressure was. So I'm like, oh man, I gotta do something different. That's crazy. So take me to the hospital. I was there for a few hours before getting released, and I think they had diagnosed me with high blood pressure for one, if I remember right, and anxiety. But what the doctor told me, which was a little different from the paramedics. So the doctors told me that they don't think I could have had a heart attack from the high blood pressure, but it was more so that my blood pressure was just elevated from the anxiety, which they said is pretty common. At the time, I was struggling. From there, I was struggling with this for months, if not more than a year. But this was on and off, these feelings I kept having. So after this particular circumstance, I realized I was gonna have to take some time off of work until I got through these panic attacks, or until I got through at the time. I didn't think they were panic attacks. I thought something was really wrong with my health and that I needed to get it fixed somehow. I ended up having to take about a month and a half off of work because out of nowhere, driving started being an issue for me. Before these circumstances, I loved driving. It was kind of an escape for me. It was a release for me, whatever. I liked driving. Now, after all these things happened, I started having a weird fear of driving, and then I'd have anxiety or panic attacks anytime I drive, especially at night, especially by myself. And this was just out of nowhere. It wasn't like me. But after all these things happened, this is what I started dealing with. Eventually, it started becoming like a daily thing. I was getting the panic attacks throughout the day, just over, I even started, I stopped being able to sit still. If I watched TV for too long, I'd get these panic attacks. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is because I feel like I was almost at the worst level of anxiety you can get to. I was to the point where it was happening daily. It was hard to leave the house. It was hard to drive. I couldn't get to work, grocery stores. It was just happening everywhere, out of nowhere. Whereas I used to be super social before, and once these things started happening, I just got less and less social. I didn't want to be around people. It just amplified all of the effects of having the anxiety. Actually, look, so a few things that changed. Before the anxiety started, I could drink a lot of coffee. I drink coffee every day, regularly, just like anyone else. Football Sunday, big 30-ounce cup of coffee, drink it, watch the game. Anytime I go to work, coffee in the morning, maybe a couple cups throughout the day, just like anyone else. Now, after the anxiety, I started being super sensitive to caffeine, so I couldn't even do, I do a small cup or a couple of sips. Next thing you know, pulse pounding out of my chest, out of my hands, etc. I couldn't do coffee anymore. That was an issue. Driving became an issue. Just being out around too many people became an issue, whereas it never was before. Like I said before, I I was a really social person. I always wanted to be out before this happened. I also smoked cigarettes. So cigarettes also became an activator. So I'd smoke a cigarette and my blood pressure would just shoot through the roof, pulse would pound. Kind of the same thing as coffee. After I got out of the doctor though, I found myself a blood pressure machine, so I was kind of keeping an eye on it at that time. So I was cutting down smoking, couldn't drink coffee anymore, etc. So it was a huge life changer, and this stuck with me for a while. It stuck with me for probably more than a year. Now, those are some of the things that have changed. Okay, so now I want to talk to you guys about some of the things that made it better and my steps to get to where I'm at now. And excuse me, but I'm actually having a decent amount of anxiety now talking about it. But you know, it's kind of one of the activators. I don't want you guys to think I should be heard any less because of this. It's just talking to the camera, being in a hurry, you know, kind of reliving some of the things. But I want you guys to know that I am in such a better place. From where I was then to now is a complete 180. I'm able to do so many more things with so much less anxiety than what I was able to do about 5 or 6 years ago. And this is when it all started. It's been about 5.5 years. And I want to talk about the steps that I took to get to where I am now. And it went from basically not being able to drive, not being able to drink coffee, not being able to almost be alone, not able to relax, sit, watch TV, to now I'm productive, I'm back at work. It's kind of rare when I get anxiety. I'm having a little right now just talking about it because it's kind of it's a real personal issue for me. It's close to me. It can be kind of difficult to talk about sometimes. Right now is one of those moments, talking to a camera, etc. But now, back at my job, I run a small business on the side doing my video work. I'm extremely productive. I'm a lot more social without alcohol, whereas I used to use alcohol as a crutch before to kind of be social. I can't remember the last time I had an anxiety attack driving or being at the grocery store. I'm able to do so many more things, and I'm appreciative now almost that I ever went through this situation because I feel like it's made me a much stronger person, a much healthier person, and I'm thankful for these things. So I'm gonna walk you through what I did to get to where I'm at now. So I strongly believe that whatever fears you have, you guys need to face them head on. If you're afraid of something, you need to do it, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you're gonna be doing it. If something gives you anxiety, you need to do that more until it doesn't give you anxiety anymore. And this is pretty much my strategy from the get-go. So I was tired of not being able to drive on my own. I was tired of getting uncomfortable, getting really bad anxiety at nights. I was frustrated with not being able to drink coffee. You know, one of the first things I did, I was like, you know, fuck this. I was like, you know what, forget this. I'm gonna go for a drive at night alone, which was kind of a trigger for me. And I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna drink a big cup of coffee. So I stopped at AM PM. At night, I got me one of the biggest cups you can get of coffee. I put like espresso in it or whatever it was, the strong stuff. I just pounded the whole cup, drove at night. Anxiety kind of was killing me, but I got through it. Drove around for a while until I felt like I was okay and I was gonna get through it. And I did. I got through it, and it helped me mentally. I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna die. I might feel like crap, but I'm gonna get through this. I might feel like shit, but I'm gonna get through this. So I did. Drank the coffee, drove around by myself, didn't need any help, and drove back home. And it was a small accomplishment, but you know, for me, it felt like a huge one. It felt like I got through something that had been such an impedance on me for a while, and it meant a lot to me. That was the first step. I did that a couple times until the coffee didn't scare me as much and the driving didn't scare me as much. So that was one of the first things I did that helped. Now, I took about a month and a half off from work, no work. When I did come back, one of the things that I used to help me was exercise. It's a great stress reliever, for one. I've heard a lot of people say that, and it's also my belief that a lot of anxiety is just built up energy. So getting that energy out will help you. Getting that physical, whatever extra energy that you have built up is just going to help assist you with your anxiety. So if you get out, you do something physical, you expend some of that energy, I feel like that's gonna help you. It helps me for sure every day to do a physical activity, get some energy out. For me, for a long time, it was lifting. Now I lift, I run, I do some striking, some jiu-jitsu, practice some different forms of MMA, and that is a huge stress reliever for me, for one. It relieves stress, it helps with anxiety, so physical activity is a huge one. When it first started for me, I was just getting into it, I was getting healthy, but not to the degree that I got into after the anxiety started. So that was huge for me. I recommend exercise for anyone who's having anxiety. Wake up first thing in the morning, get an exercise in, and it will make you feel so much better. I strongly believe that. I started eating cleaner. I watched what I ate. I didn't eat as much processed foods. I ate more clean. I exercised more. This relieved a lot of stress for me. Now, some of these things, I think they'll work for everyone, but you might not be interested in these things. Maybe you want something. Maybe you can't exercise that day or you're short on time. The next thing I'm going to talk about is some physical things that literally helped me get back into work after a month and a half off, slowly helped me actually be able to return to work. These are some of the biggest helps that I've had with my whole anxiety experience and getting me through social situations, getting back to work, etc. So before I returned to work, I want to talk about that too. Before I returned to work, I saw a psychologist and a psychiatrist, whichever the one is that can prescribe you medications. I saw them, which is a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and they didn't help at all. They actually prescribed me a handful of medications that just could have probably caused lasting side effects for years, if not my whole life. Before this, I never liked taking medications. I did, even if it was just for a headache, I didn't even like taking Tylenol. I did not like taking medications. Now, the psychologist or psychiatrist basically sat me down. They asked me to tell them my life story, what I had been through, which, to some people might seem like a lot. They took that information and they took the information that I gave them about my mother and best friend, or who I call my brother, also suffering from anxiety. She took that information and basically told me, you will never get better, that it was like a biological thing, that if I didn't take her medications, that I was never going to get better. Now, I heard that, and that was never my plan. I never wanted to take the medications. I brought them home. I recognized some of the names from doing in-home care, and from my mother who took some of them and my brother who took some of them. I got home, I called my brother. Now, my brother suffered with anxiety for a few years, maybe about 5 years at the time, and his was super severe to the point where he was afraid he was going to become agoraphobic, or basically, he was afraid he would be scared to leave the house. He was struggling to keep down the job. His social life was almost non-existent, whereas before it had been. Now, some of these medications I was prescribed, he was also prescribed and he had been on too. He told me basically from jump, like, look, don't take those. They're not gonna make you better, basically. They'll make it worse. That's what I remember him telling me. Also, I knew from experience, my mother had taken the same ones, and I never believed that they had made her better. I believed that they had just made her more dependent on them. So I never wanted to take these medications. I strongly didn't want to. Now, that was, I believe, the psychiatrist, whichever it is. That one, I didn't really take anything beneficial from her. It was super negative. Basically, like I said that I would never get better unless I took the meds. It was biologic, and I was only gonna get worse. That it would get worse from there for sure. Now, aside from that, I also saw the opposite, or the psychiatrist or psychologist. I saw another guy who had helped, and that was just, he had helped by just being able to talk about my problems. Now, I wanted to see the psychologist more, or whatnot. I wanted to see this other guy more, but he was very expensive and I couldn't afford it. But he had helped. He was, I went in and it was actually a guy who had lost one of his hands. I'm not sure what the incident was, if I had lost it, but you just go in, he was very understanding, and then you see someone who'd actually lost a limb, and you think, man, they've been through some things too. They can understand what I'm going through. So he was easy to talk to. I had a good session. I got some things out that I needed to get out, but I was only able to see them one time. Throughout the years, I thought about going back. I felt I really wanted to, but I just couldn't afford it. So anyways, I didn't take pretty much any of these medications. I took, out of maybe the 5 or 6 medications that they prescribed me, I never took any other than maybe 2. I only took about 2 of those. And I only took them both a handful of times. The only 2 meds that I ever took out of the handful they prescribed me was alprazolam and diazepam, I think. Now, one of them is basically like Xanax, and it's fast acting. It'll actually get you a little head change. It'll get you a little high, make you drowsy, make you sleepy. Never wanted to take it any more than I had to, but I did keep it on me. And keeping it on me helped me get through my anxiety sometimes. Having it on me, knowing it was there, etc. Diazepam was like a slow releasing one that lasted or stayed in your system for a little bit longer. Those are the only 2 that I ever even considered taking. I never considered taking the other ones, never touched them. Can't remember if I ever took the blood pressure medication that they'd given me. I may have not. It's hard to remember, but as I said, I hated taking medications, never wanted to. So I had to find a way to get myself back to work after going through all of these struggles. I remember the first day back, I went back to work and I had to drive one of my clients again. The same thing ended up happening, but this time I made it through. I drove my client for a little bit. was struggling super bad to make it through the day. And at that point, I was like, basically, okay, I need to try to see if I can get an easier shift, less driving, somewhere where I can stay with the client more at home, so I wouldn't be feeling the anxiety as bad. So that's what I did. I got some shifts changed around. I got some easier clients where I drove less, but I was still driving, and I was struggling to make it through. For the first couple of months, the way I was making it through was having the Xanax on me, either in a bag, in my pocket, just always having them on me, so I knew that if I had a panic attack, I could take one and I would feel a little bit better and I could make it through until either I'm not driving or until I get to a safe zone or something like that. Another thing I wanted to talk about while I brought that up is comfort zones, because I believe this is important. So comfort zones. One of the circumstances for a lot of people with anxiety is they have a comfort zone, and it was always it was weird for me. It's like, for a lot of people that have anxiety, home is their comfort zone. That's where their anxiety isn't as bad. They get home, their anxiety goes away, or at least it's not as bad as if they were out. You get home, you feel better. For some people, it's the hospital. You feel terrible until the point that you get to the hospital, and then sometimes you'll feel a little bit better. You'll feel a little relief. Now, why is that? Now, I also brought up facing your fears and how much that helps. So in comfort zones, like I said, home can be a comfort zone for people with anxiety. The hospital can. You tend to feel a little bit better once you arrive at the ER or once you get home. I feel like your comfort zone is wherever you would be at the most. So a lot of people have anxiety just going to the grocery store, being around a lot of people. But I strongly believe that, and I've said this before, that if you woke up around a lot of people, or let's say the mall, if the mall is like a trigger for you, if you woke up every day in the mall, if you slept at the mall and you're surrounded by people when you woke up, if you experience that every morning, I feel like that would be a comfort zone. It would no longer give you anxiety. If driving gives you anxiety, you drive every day, you're no longer going to get anxiety. If social situations give you anxiety and you do those things every day, it's going to become your comfort zone. It's going to get easier. It's not going to be as hard, but you have to do them. If you keep shying away from them and running away from your problems, running away from your fears, it's never going to get easier. It's only going to get easier if you do them more, you practice doing them. That's what's going to get you over your anxiety and your fear. So that's one. So I'm going to work for a couple of months. Now, my secret to get me through is having the Xanax on me. Though I rarely took it. If I did, it would be a half a pill. I'd let it dissolve on my tongue. It would get me through maybe a drive or just when my anxiety was super bad, long enough to get me through work. But it was bad. It was almost always bad. I only took it when it was just to the point where I couldn't stand it anymore. But it was always bad at the time. It was an almost everyday occurrence I was trying to get through. So what I did, and this is huge, and I recommend this for anyone who is having anxiety, who has anxiety, who troubles with social situations, or just anxiety in general. The first thing I started doing was hard candy and Tic Tacs. I believe hard candies was one of the first things that I tried. And what it does is it takes some of that focus off of what's going on physically, what's going on mentally, and it gives you something else to focus on. So chewing on a hard candy, but I wouldn't recommend a hard candy first. After the hard candy, what I discovered was Tic Tacs and Halls. So breath lozenges or whatnot, these cough drops. What I find that helps is the menthol, the numbing, the coolness. I would do Tic Tacs before I really tried these, and I would go through a ton of Tic Tacs to get me through. So I would go through a ton of Tic Tacs. I was always jingling, but so what I came to notice was that the Tic Tacs were helping me get through my situation without having to take the pills. I would chew on the Tic Tacs. It would give me something else to focus on, to chew. You could feel the menthol. You could feel like the coolness in your breath or in your mouth. And it was a distraction. It's just slight, but it's a little bit of a distraction from what's going on in your head, which is the anxiety. That was a huge help. Anytime the anxiety got super bad, I'd chew on one of those. It would get me through a conversation. It would get me through a drive, which was one of the most difficult things for me at the time, was driving while at work with the client. I would chew on some Halls or some Tic Tacs, and it would literally get me through. Anyone who has anxiety, before you pop a pill, before you give up, go get you some Halls and Tic Tacs and chew on those things while you're having anxiety and see if it doesn't help at least a little bit. I really strongly believe that it will. This lasted for a few months. I always had the pills on me. I had the Tic Tacs, the Halls, and this is what I used to get me through work. Now, eventually, after this happened for months, so I think we're probably more than 6 months in. I'm using the Halls and the Tic Tacs, and I'm always having the pills on me. After a while, one of my goals was to go to work and leave the pills at home. Now this sounds small, but for me it was huge because I depended on them so heavily to get me through work, knowing that I had that backup, knowing that if I have a panic attack, I could pop one of those, I'd feel better, I'd get through work. It was huge. So the first time I remember I said, hey, I'm gonna leave these pills at home. I'm just gonna take my Tic Tacs or my Halls, and I'm gonna make it through. And I went, I had a rough day, it was hard. I knew that I didn't have the pills on me, but I made it through. You know, I ate a ton of Tic Tacs that day. but it was a huge accomplishment, and a lot of people wouldn't understand that. But for me, if you know what it's like to have a panic attack and get through it on your own, I think that's one of the biggest things, is having a panic attack and getting through it on your own without the pills. Don't be dependent on the pills, because if you depend on the pills today, you're going to depend on those same pills every single time, and you're never going to know how to get through it without them. In that, you know, and in that sense, I don't think you'll ever get better, because you're always going to need and depend on those. For me, I depended on the Tic Tacs. Now that's sustainable. Taking a Xanax every time you have a panic attack, if you have one every day, is not sustainable. You're gonna mess up your health. You're not gonna get better like that. I don't believe personally. I'm not a doctor, but I don't believe that personally. It did not work for me. It did not work for my brother. It did not work for my mother, and it didn't work for other friends I know as well, who depend so heavily on the pills and never tried to get through it without them long enough to figure out and see that they actually could. After maybe about 6 months of work or so, I started leaving the pills at home and figuring out a way to get through it without them. And it might even have been more than 6 months. I might have just skated by still having them on me, and probably mostly Tic Tacs, but eventually, after a long struggle, after months and months, I started leaving them at home, and I was getting through work. This was huge. Still, whenever I went out to a big social event or something that was important, I was gonna be around a lot of people. Usually, I made sure I had my pills on me, probably for more than a year after I started getting anxiety attacks, maybe a year and a half, and it might even have been more. Anyways, this lasted for a long time, but I started getting through work with those, and then later, after even more months of Tic Tacs and Halls being my comfort and the thing that got me through, another thing that I started doing was toothpicks. So just a regular toothpick, and it's probably not as strong. Yeah, so just a regular toothpick, man. Now, it's probably not as strong of a distraction because you don't have the menthol, you don't have, you know, that extra cooling sensation to take your mind off of the anxiety, but you also don't have to be eating anything. You can carry a toothpick everywhere, super cheap. And those have been huge for me. Those have gotten me through social situations. Those have gotten me through drives, through anxiety. They've got me through work. Just give me something to chew on. I would strongly recommend Halls or Tic Tacs over them. But when you feel like you've built up that resilience to it, then maybe you can try toothpicks afterwards. Those have been a huge help. Super inconspicuous. Also, another thing is I quit smoking for a couple of years. So it kind of helps for if you want, you know, just something to chew on, and just that whole, just being able to do something with your mouth. For smokers, that's a big thing. So if you're considering quitting smoking, also consider going and getting you some toothpicks. Those have helped a lot. Don't even really have the urge to smoke anymore. Just always chewing on a toothpick, man. And a lot of people don't really think anything of it. So let's go from there. So I still have anxiety. It's still a struggle for me, but it's so much better than what it used to be. I'm able to do so many more things than I used to, and at the end of the day, I don't need the Xanax on me anymore. I've probably only popped I've only taken a handful of Xanax since I was prescribed them about 6 years ago, and in the past 3 years, I've probably taken maybe a total, and probably not even this much, but in 3 years, I've maybe taken a total of maybe 4 or 5 Xanax in 3 years. I almost never have them on me anymore, unless I'm doing a very stressful wedding shoot. I don't know, if I'm taking a plane flight, and I hardly ever take them. It's the comfort of having them there. Now at work, I pretty much never have them on me. I don't need them anymore. I know that if I'm having a panic attack or anxiety attack, toothpicks and Halls will get me through and I'll be okay. I don't need to take them. I don't need to feel like crap afterwards. I don't need to be drowsy. I don't need them anymore. Knowing that I don't need them is a huge victory, and I'm sure it'll feel like one for you guys too if you've struggled with getting through anxiety without them. Slowly try to wean your way off by using Tic Tacs or Halls and not taking the pills. You'll feel like it's a victory as well. So extremely stressful situations like weddings, I'll keep them on me. Rarely ever have to take them. Toothpicks and Halls will get me through. I'm back at my job. I get anxiety now there rarely. It's still prevalent, but it's probably always going to be like that for most people who have anxiety, who struggle with anxiety. But the thing is, I make progress every day. And I'm not dependent on the pills, which feels like a huge victory, and I feel like it will for you too. I'm able to do a lot of things that I was not able to do before with literally no anxiety. Driving is one. I'm able to drink coffee now. I drink coffee before my workouts now. That's just something I can't do like I used to do anymore. I can't drink coffee like I used to, but I work out on a daily basis, which helps my anxiety a tremendous amount. I'm able to drink coffee, but before workouts, not during the day, or usually it will kind of make me pretty jittery and make me feel kind of crappy. So it's just something I had to accept, that I couldn't drink coffee like I used to anymore. I couldn't do things the way that I used to. Staying healthy helps a lot. Eating healthy, consistent exercise helps a lot. It's something I strongly recommend. these things have got me through. I'm able to do a lot of things I wasn't before. I can't remember the last time I was just having anxiety just from driving or going to the grocery store. It just doesn't really happen anymore. I occasionally get anxiety at work, but for the most part I don't. Social situations, my anxiety is so much better. I'm able to do a lot of things I wasn't before. Go out, drive, etc. If there's something that gives you anxiety that you like doing, I suggest that you do it more. If creating music or performing gives you anxiety, do it more, because the more you do it, the less it's going to stress you out, the less anxiety it's going to give you. And this is for people who don't even have generalized anxiety. Doing new things gives them anxiety. It makes them anxious. Just like you, except for you, for people who actually struggle with anxiety disorder, it's going to be amplified. So if you're afraid to do something, do it more. If something is a trigger for you and it's healthy, do it more. Go out, get exercise. Get you some of these and put the fucking pills, put the pills away. Get some toothpicks and chew on these if you're getting nervous going out social. Don't resort to just popping a pill that most likely is going to have a long-lasting negative health effect on yourself. Being productive has been a huge help for me as well. So not only exercise, going out, training jiu-jitsu, doing something physical, but doing something productive, creating, has been a huge outlet for me. And I feel like having an outlet is huge in life. It's huge for getting you through, for maintaining happiness, for having less anxiety. Just be productive and have a goal, no matter what the goal is. If it's a goal at work, if it's a goal with money, in your creative life, creating videos, music, whatever it may be, having a goal is going to be huge. It's going to take some of your focus off of your anxiety. It's going to give you a goal and something to work towards. If I had to chop it up to all the things that have helped me, still take this for what it is and take this advice positively, because it has helped me in a huge way, and I do believe it'll help a lot of you as well. And several friends of mine have tried these things and it helps them as well, between the halls and the toothpicks and the Tic Tacs, and I do believe it'll help you guys as well. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm a much happier person for having found these things, for having found these cures or these assisters. They've helped me a lot and have gotten me through, and I do honestly believe that they'll help other people too. Even if it just comes down to not knowing that you could just do halls and it'll help you and it'll get you through. If it'll get you through work, if it'll get you through a stressful situation without having to take some prescription medication, some drugs, then I'll be really happy. So like I said, my goal at the end of the day is just to help people. I know that these things I've mentioned have helped me a lot. I'm hoping they help you as well. So anybody watching, let me know what you thought of the video. Please try these things if you do have anxiety. I really want to hear if they helped you. So if you guys have any questions or if you wanted any advice, please feel free to comment or to send me an email, and I'd be happy to respond to any of you. At the end of the day, I just want there to be a positive reason out of all of the things that I've gone through, and it has been a struggle. It's been a struggle for about 6 years. I have big stressors in my life, a lot of which I won't even mention, but big stressors in my life, between work, between having a special needs son, and just between some of the things that I've gone through when I was younger that a lot of people haven't experienced. Growing up, we didn't grow up with a lot of money. I made a lot of bad choices when I was younger, and when I was 16, an acquaintance of mine was actually murdered, pretty much died in my arms. Grew up homeless for a few years. A lot of big stressors in my life, but now I can say I'm a more appreciative, happier person. I'm healthier. I'm so appreciative of every day that I have, especially while I'm on the right track. If this video helped any of you, I'd really want you guys to let me know. If you have any questions, if you want any advice, please feel free to leave a comment, send me an email, and whatever I can do to help you through your situation or through your anxiety, I would be happy to do so. Please let me know what you guys thought of this video, and I really hope it helps someone. Even if it's just one person, then the situation that I've gone through would have been beneficial, and it would have been a positive. Especially if I'm able to help a couple people, then that will really make me happy. So I hope this helps some of you guys. Please let me know if any of these things helped you. I'd be pumped to hear so. So I do plan on making follow-up videos to this. If you guys would like more videos like this, please let me know. So I hope this helped. Curious to hear what you guys think, and I hope you guys stay tuned, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Y'all have a good one.